of WebSockets in AWS. So let's get started. So what are WebSockets? WebSocket is a protocol for creating a fast two-way channel between a web browser and a server. So in simple words, WebSockets are for communication between the client and the server. So you can transfer your data between the two, just like the API. So what is the basic difference between HTTP APIs and WebSockets? In HTTP APIs, first the client connects to the server, it sends a connection request, then server accepts it, the connection gets established, then the client sends the data, server responds the client with that data, and the connection gets closed. But in WebSockets, the connection is established, then the client can send any number of requests to the server, and server can also send any number of requests or response to the client. And this communication is there until the client disconnects the socket or the server disconnects the socket. So this is the benefits of WebSockets over HTTP APIs. So for this tutorial, what you need basic understanding of what are the HTTP APIs. You need basic knowledge of AWS, how it works, and Python. Okay, so let's move to hands-on. So what we are going to do, we have opened API gateway of AWS. I'll click on create a new API, then WebSocket API. Now I will give the name of my API, which is WebSockets underscore YouTube, and I'll also mention root selection expression. We will understand it later. We will be using it for different APIs. So my root selection expression is action. This body is JSON body, and this request is the request. So I'll click on create API. Now the API is ready. Now we have some things to configure here. One is connect, disconnect, and default. So what is connect? Whenever a client connects to the server, this connect $connect will be called. So now what will happen when $connect will be called? You can invoke a Lambda function. You can call a HTTP API. You can also mock it, or you can call a AWS service. So for this tutorial, we are going to have a new Lambda function which will be called when a client is connecting to the WebSocket server. So what we are going to do, we are creating a new Lambda function here. I'll name it as socket, WebSocket on connect. The runtime will be Python. We will be coding it in Python, and we will be using a new basic Lambda permissions role here. So what we are going to do in this connect Lambda function is we are simulating a chat environment here, because WebSockets is generally used for chatting purpose. So that's for the chat application. So what we are going to do, when a user gets connected, we will be taking the user ID of that user, and we will be storing that user ID against the connection ID given by the WebSocket. So here is a Lambda function. Let's start coding it. So we will be taking the connection ID, which will be provided by the AWS WebSockets. So we get it in the request context. Connection ID is the key. We will also be needing the user ID, which we will be taking in the query string of the socket URL. So the query string parameters, and user ID will be the key. We also need to store the connection of the user ID and the connection ID somewhere. So what we are going to do is, we are storing it in DynamoDB. Dynamo boto3 dot resource DynamoDB dot table. Okay, so we also have to have some imports here, boto core also. Okay, now we will be creating a new table in DynamoDB. DynamoDB, create a table. We will name it as online connection, and our connection, so we will name it as token. Token will be the connection ID. We will be creating it. So the DynamoDB table is ready, and now what we are going to do is we will be creating a JSON object to push into the DynamoDB table. User ID will be user ID, and token, token, it's in small case. Token will be the connection ID. Our JSON object is ready. Now let's push it to dynamo.put item. Okay, I think we are done here. Now we will be returning the success response to the client that the connection is successfully established. So this is the basic JSON structure which the AWS socket understands. 200 will be the status code. We will also give some headers here. Status will be success, and body success. You can also use the same thing. Okay, I think we are done here. Let's save it, and now we will configure this lambda function in our API gateway. In the connect, integration request, WebSocket on connect. So this is a very important parameter. Use lambda proxy integration. So all the lambda integration that we are doing is based on this. So the connection ID, the user ID, everything we'll get from this proxy integration. So let's save it. Okay, so one thing I think we missed out is we have to give permission of DynamoDB to this lambda function. So we'll go to IAM management console here, and we will be adding the inline policy. Service will be DynamoDB. So why we are doing this is this lambda function will not have access to the DynamoDB, and we have to do it. So for now we are giving complete access of DynamoDB to this lambda function, but you can also restrict it. It will be WebSocket policy, create policy, and now this lambda function has access to the DynamoDB also. So let's test it. So for testing it, we need to go to API gateway. This is done. Now we need to deploy this API. We have to define a new stage, dev, then deploy, and now we'll get a WebSocket URL from AWS. We have to use this for the connection. So we will open the terminal. I am using WSCat for connecting. You can use any other WebSocket client. So WSCat is you can install it using npm. So user ID is equal to Ankit, and it is connected. So we just need to go to DynamoDB and check if our record is available. So we have it here. The user ID Ankit is connected with this token, and if we want to send any message directly from server to client, we can use this URL for that, and for connection this is the URL. So now our connect method is ready. Now we need to make a new lambda function WebSocket on disconnect. So on disconnect we have to delete the DynamoDB entry. So WebSocket on disconnect Python. We will be using the existing role because it already has the DynamoDB rights. Okay, it is ready. Now we will write a code to delete that entry from the DynamoDB. So let's get started with the imports. Boto3 import Boto core, and we will be first taking the connection ID. Request context, and the key is connection ID. Now we need to have an instance of Dynamo here. Boto3.resource DynamoDB dot table name was online connection. Now we just need to delete it. Dynamo.delete underscore item. We need to provide the key here. Key is equal to, so the token will be the connection ID. I think that's all. Let's save it and configure this in the API gateway disconnect route. Disconnect and web socket on disconnect. Let's save it. We need to again deploy the API in the same development stage, dev, and we need to connect it again. Okay, so we have two items here. One was the old one and one is the new one. Now when we disconnect it, let's see if one gets deleted. So the one gets deleted here, so it's working. So I think we'll try it again. It is created here. Once we disconnected, it's get deleted. So this is our first part of tutorial. We have understood how WebSocket works in AWS. We have configured the connect and disconnect lambda functions, and we are storing something in DynamoDB related to the user, some small info and the connection ID. So in the next tutorial we will be understanding how to send a message to the user from the server, and how a client can send a request to server and get response. So stay tuned guys, we will be coming up with the next tutorial soon. Thanks for watching. Have a nice day. Bye bye. Guys, welcome to the second part of our tutorial. So we were creating a chat application in API gateway of AWS using WebSockets. So let's get started with another tutorial. So what we will be doing today is we are creating another lambda function for sending the message from your one user to another, and we will also receive the message on the other side. So to start with, we need to create a new lambda function. I'll go to AWS console from scratch. Name would be YouTube underscore send message. We are using Python here 3.7. And the execution role, I have already created some execution role here, so I'll be using that. Okay. Okay, so we can use this. We'll create a function here with Python 3.7 runtime, and we are done. Now I'll go to my Visual Studio Code. So this time I'll not be coding right in the portal of Lambda function, because I need some different libraries here which are not available in the Lambda. So I'll code it here, and then we'll see how we can create a zip file of our Python environment and how we can push it to the AWS Lambda. So I'll start with some import statements here. We will be using uh, Boto 3 for interacting with the DynamoDB database. I'll be using datetime. We'll also import all these into our Python environment. So this is a new library that we will be using. So if you want to communicate with AWS console, you need the authorization first. So this library will help us. Request we will be using for doing the HTTP calls. This we are importing for doing CRUD operations in DynamoDB. Okay, and last one is OS, which we will be using for getting the access key and access secret of AWS from Lambda environment variable. So let's get started by writing a method. So this will be our function name. The parameters will be exactly same what we have in the lambda function when we used to code there. So in last tutorial we saw for connect and for disconnect lambda function we used the lambda function console only for writing the code, but this time we are doing it like this. Event, we will be getting the body from the lambda proxy, and receiver ID. So the user will be sending some message to the user ID rather than the connection ID. So we want to make it more flexible here. So the receiver ID will be in the body. Now we need to get the message from the JSON payload. So the message will be also in body. We will send it in this key, and we can also write message date time. So message date time we can use to store it in DynamoDB or for any purpose. Now I am creating a context of DynamoDB. Boto3.resource. DynamoDB. And table name would be online connection. So in the last tutorial we saw we were storing the connection IDs and the username in the online connection DB. So we will be using the same. here dot scan, we will be scanning it. Filter expression would be the key of user ID, because we were storing the user like this. So if it is equal to the receiver ID, so if it is equal to the receiver ID, we have to get the connection ID, and we will check if the user is already online or the user is offline. So this is just a condition. If the length of items is equal to 1, then receiver connection ID would be, we will get it from the DB, so it's result u items. So it will always be on the 0th index. So I'm not putting conditions as of now. If you want, you can put it. So this is the receiver connection ID. We got it from DB. And what next? We have to get the token for the current user also. So DynamoDB connections dot similar scan, filter x filter expression will be the key, will be the token this time. So the token, if the token is equal to connection ID, which is the current connection ID which the user is trying to send the message, then we will get the username from the DB. So when the receiver receives the message, the receiver should know that from which user this message is coming. So similar validations we are using here. If it is the length of items is equal to 1, which will be the ideal case, so the sender ID we will get. So sender ID would be result x items 0th index and user ID. Yeah, that's all. Now we have the sender ID, we have the receiver ID, we have receiver connection ID. Now we will create the JSON payload which we will be sending. So JSON object to send, this will be sent to the user. What it will have is, it will have message maybe ID, which will be which can be message date time. What else we can send? We can send the actual message, which will be msg, and we will also send who has sent this message, which will be sender ID. Okay, so this is all. Now we will just put some validations here. Else let's return something here. Return. So this will be the standard way of returning response. Body would be, okay, sorry, yeah, so body would be data. Okay, I think if it is not available, then some error occurred. Okay, but we will send as 200 response. Else if the user is not online, so user not online, and if everything goes well, we will say message is delivered. Okay, so now we have to create a method for sending this JSON payload which we just have created. So let's create that method. So it will be send direct message. This will receive the token to the user whom we are sending, the token of that user. and the JSON payload. So now to start with this method, we need some access key and access secret of AWS environment. You can get it from the IAM management console. So if you log into this, just below the password here, you get access keys. You can click on this and you can get your access key and access secret access key. Uh, Make sure you create your new IAM role for this. Do not use the access key for the admin. That is recommendable, but anyways you can use it. So secret key would be, so we are going to store our access key and access secret in the AWS Lambda function. I'll show you where to do that. So this is the method which you have just created, Lambda function. So here is the option for environment variables. So you can click on manage environment variables, add this, and access key would be something and secret key would be something, and then you can just click on save. So these values you can get it from the IAM management console, and then you can see it here like this, and we are also using the same. So this we will use to access our AWS endpoints. You will just see how we will do it. So I am creating an object of request auth here. AWS access key would be access key, and AWS secret access key would be your secret key, and AWS host would be, this will be your host. We have to get it from API gateway. So just go to stages, dev, and get it from here. So you just have to copy till here. It will be like this. Now some more parameters. AWS region would be, it will be, we are using East, US East 1, and AWS service, that this is also important. Service would be execute API, because we are calling one API. So we will be calling this API. So this connection URL can be used to send the messages from one user to another, and this is for the connection. So this connection URL we will just use. So we are executing a AWS API. So this is our object now. Let's go ahead and define the URL. So the URL will be this. I'll paste it here. So just make sure some important things here. You will not be able to get it online anywhere. So I am telling you, this @ will be replaced by %40. We are just encoding it. Make sure you do it like this only, because if you use any library for encoding the URL, you'll fail. So you'll not be able to execute that. So just make it as it is, how I have written it. So we will have to append token also here. Token is this one. So token dot replace, we will replace the, so there is a equal to at the end of the token. So okay, so we will replace that, and we will append our string with %3d, which is equal to encoded format. So now is our HTTP request. So requests library we are using dot post, we will be making a post call where to the URL, and auth will be the auth object which we just have created, and data would be our JSON object. So just make sure you always send this in string, because socket doesn't accept JSON objects. So now you will get the response. So you can also print it if you want. That will be req.text. You will get some string here. If you want the status code, you can write it as request.status code. You can also get that. So now we are done. We just need to use this method here, and token will be of the receiver connection ID, and object will be JSON object to send, and we are done. So now what we have to do is we will create a new Python environment. So Python 3 virtual environment will create by the name of env. So we got it here. Okay, it will take some time. Okay, it is done. So now we will activate this. Now we have entered the Python environment. Now we have to install some dependencies. So first one will be the request. Because of this library only, we have created this library. Okay, it will take some time to install. Okay, it is done. Now we will install boto3 using pip command. Okay, okay, it is also done. Now what we have to do, just note down the steps that we will be doing here. We will be creating a zip file. So how to create a zip file? You have to go to, one second. So you have to go to the lib site packages, and we will paste here our lambda.py. Okay, so we will go to lib python 3.7 site packages and paste it here. Okay, so now this folder will create a zip. How to create a zip? If you are using Mac operating system, so you will write here zip -r lamb.zip and a dot to create zip of all the files and folders available in that. Okay, so we will get a lamb.zip. It will take a while. Okay, so this lamb.zip is available here. Now what we have to do, we will open our yt underscore send lambda function. We will write it, we will select the option of upload a zip file. Runtime will be same, and handler we will change, because handler we have app lambda. Okay, app lambda will be the method name, and file name will be lambda.py. So lambda.py. Okay, so now we will upload our function package. It will be somewhere here. I'll click on save. Now this will take some time to upload. So till the time it gets uploaded, I'll tell you to mention these values carefully, because if these are not okay, your function will give you some errors. So I'll take a pause here. So once this is uploaded, we'll resume. So our lambda function is uploaded. Now I hope you have configured your environment variables here. So let's go ahead and create a root here. The root action will be send message, and we have to connect this with our lambda function which we just created, yt underscore send message. I will save it, and we also have to add the integration response, because we want to see the response if the message is delivered or not. So once this is done, you just have to deploy your API. Okay, this is done. Now I will connect. So this is our socket URL. User ID is Sanchit here, and I will have another user with the name of user ID as Ankit. Both the users are connected. I'll just quickly go to DynamoDB and check both the users exist here. Now let's start creating a method, the JSON object here. So the message would be hello. The receiver ID would be Ankit, and that's all. I just need to mention the action here. Action is send message, what we have configured in the API gateway root. This is the action. Once I click enter, see the message is received here. Similarly, if I paste it here and the receiver ID, I'll rename it to Sanchit. Here is the message. So this is how the whole concept of WebSockets work. I just need to tell you one more thing here. Uh, if this host, AWS host, doesn't work like this, you just remove HTTPS and now try it. So ideally this should work. Okay, so we are done. I think we are done. The whole WebSockets is working. You are able to send and receive message. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned, subscribe my channel, and please like this video. Thank you. Thanks a lot.